Alright, Tiff. I decided that making a video would probably be the easiest thing instead of just putting up a bunch of pictures and whatnot. So anyway, my bag is 20 inches and it's a perfect square, so it's 20 all the way around. I'm just measuring by my seams. You can do it at 21 because you have to allow for seam allowance, but it doesn't really matter. It'll just end up being like an inch shorter after you sew it all together. But so there's 6 sides. This is actually a side. This is the bottom. I didn't want to waste fabric because it's the bottom. So that's just white, which is a spare sheet that I had. That's the side. That's what I use as the top. And then that's another side. And so these two on the side, these two side panels, are actually identical. So I don't know if that kind of makes sense. So here, and it's a little bit of the yellow down there. So I cut out scrapbook paper to kind of show you, so that'd be easier for you to look at. So I'll set my camera up. I'll try to set my camera up anyway. Okay, so I have, these are the colors you could pick out. I have 2 solids. I picked the green and the brown. And then there's 3 of the patterns. And then the white ones, which there's 6 squares. That's what I just used a sheet to use as the liner. And you just cut those. So cut your 6 squares first of whatever you, if you have a sheet or something, or you could go to Goodwill and get some scrap something. So do those first, and then I cut, I did 4 inches, so I cut these strips, that would be your fabric, to be 4 inches. So that's for all of your top pieces. It's just to make sure they're the right width. So then what you can do after you get your liner pieces cut out, decide how you want your fabrics to match up. On mine, on the top piece, I put my 3 patterns together. So you could just come over here and get your 3 ones, and then you could pretty much just line it up however you want. So if you wanted that one to be a little fatter and skinnier or whatever. So I'll try to, my video camera looks like a cell phone, so it's kind of hard to set it up. And of course using paper is a lot easier than cutting out with fabric. Let's see if you can see that. Okay. So to do the top, I'm just going to cut randomly, not really even measuring. So this piece is going to come up here, and then I'll just do this one, I'll just do that one about right there. And so you see how that lines up like that. So now I just need some really thin piece to go on the inside. So that needs to be, let's see, can't tell if you can see this or not. Alright. So it looks like that needs to be about like 1/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to cut this about right there. Alright. You see that? So this is how you can get your panels to be the same size as your liner piece. So when you sew it, which you'll sew these like this, I've got, oh, here it is. I'm just going to use this green tape so that it's easy for you to see. So the first thing that you need to sew is you need to sew your pieces together, which you put your faces facing each other, and so you just sew a straight seam and connect those. And then I did a zigzag stitch on top of it, which, let's see, my machine, it is this one. And when you make a zigzag stitch, it kind of makes it, because they'd be sitting on it, so it kind of makes it a little stronger. But I like the way that it looks because you can see it shows the stitch kind of pokes out. I don't know if you can see that or not. If you don't want it to look like that, don't do zigzag. You can just do a straight stitch and it'll be fine. Okay, let me get this back up where it was. Okay, so you're going to sew that, and then to do this panel, I'm going to put the face facing like that. So you'd stitch that. And then once you open it up, they'll all be connected together, which it'll look a lot better than doing tape, but you get the idea. So that's your first panel, which is like that. And then after you get your top panel, you can either do all of your panels, or you can go ahead and just knock out like one whole section at a time, which is probably what I would do. So I would take, this is your liner piece, and just put that behind it, and you're just going to stitch it together all the way around. And I did a liner because of number one, if anything happened to it, like if anybody spit up on it or whatever, that it just wouldn't go straight to the beans. And also it just made it a little bit thicker, and that so the beans wouldn't pop out of any of the seams that I had done, because it's kind of patched together. So that's the reasoning for the liner. And see how, well, if your fabric doesn't line up perfectly, I can't see what I'm doing. See how this is kind of like, it's not exactly, that's not a big deal. You can just go back and trim it. It's not really going to make a difference. I say when you cut your patches, if they're not exact, it'll all line up anyway, because you're not really, unless you have stripes like this and you're doing them this way and they're not perfectly lined up, then it might look a little crooked, but it's not a big deal. So this is all stitched together, and you top stitch it across here, so this will show, and so then you can finish doing your other patches. And if you want to go ahead and just make the two, I had the two sides here that were the same, and I just did a bigger one and then a smaller one. And again, you just take your square, and I'm just going to use the stripes and a solid piece. So I'm just going to cut it about right there, and then I'll just pair it with the brown. Alright. So I'm actually just going to put this, this is why we cut them 4 inches, so that would be right. I'm just going to put this about here, line it up on the back, and then I'm just going to cut this here so it'll be to size. Okay, so that's that. So since I'm making these two the same, I'm just going to do these. This is why it's, if you go ahead and just cut them the width to begin with, you only have to do the one cut, and you know that it's going to be the right, to make up the right thing. So you're just going to do the same thing to make these. Just sew it facing the outward sides facing each other, and you'll sew that in. And again, you can do your top stitch, the straight seam, and you can zigzag these if you want that same look. And then these. It actually takes a lot longer when you're sewing it, so if it ends up taking you like 4 hours to make one, that's not a big deal. So then when you sew it to your panels, unless you just want to double stitch it with a zigzag, you can, but it's not really going to be necessary because these are going to get sewed again. So this is just purely to attach the lining to your front panel, I guess I should call it, I don't know. So I'm going to turn this off and make the rest of my patches because you probably don't want to sit here and just rewatch the same thing over and over again. So once I get all these taped together, then I will show you how you can assemble the whole thing. Again, that's straight seam, top stitched onto your panel. So I'll get these done and we'll see where it goes from there. Okay, I kind of discovered an easier, kind of an easier way. Like for this panel, I'm just going to do these two colors. This is a side piece. So I'm just going to go ahead and just sew these two together. And then instead of just trying to guess, I'm just going to take the back panel and then you could just lay it on top and kind of slide it whether you want this to be more up here and a little down here. So I don't really like things straight in the middle, so I'm just going to cut it on top like that. And so it kind of just takes the having to measure it out of it. I mean, you could do the math, do 6 inches here, 5 inches of this, and then whatever's left of however big you want to do it. But that way, see, it just came out just perfectly like that. And then even if you wanted to do like when you do the 3 panel, say you have, I'll just make a different one. Alright, so if you start with your middle piece, and you can just kind of cut wherever you want for your middle piece, and just do the 2 pieces that you know that you want them to be the sides, and then you just sew the middle pieces, or sew the 2 side pieces onto the middle side. I don't even know what I'm talking about. This is really easy to look at. So it looks like this. So now, instead of having to just use a measuring tape, just lay either your back piece, or if you make a template out of whatever, and then you just cut it. I don't think that I did it like this when I made it, but it probably would have been a lot better because I think when I cut my panels, I actually got out the measuring tape and measured out how many inches remained. But this is actually a ton easier, so you're not going to have to do that. Alright, let me turn this off and I'll get it all laid out. Okay, so your next thing that you would do, and this is after you have all of your top panels sewn to your liner, is decide what you want your top piece to be. And I'm just going to use this one. And so if you look at my bag, the side pieces that are identical, and then here's the top, and then the other side is on that side. So when you lay your piece out, then you're going to take your side pieces and you're just going to line them up like this. And because I want the stripes to be the same way, then you're going to put that one upside down. Because once it's folded in like a square, if you did it this way, then it would be upside down once it's all sewn together. So this is your top. I'll just write that on there. Alright. Okay, so this is your top. I'm just going to put ID for identical sides. And I'm going to write that upside down so you know that one's upside down. Alright. But that one's going this way. So I'm just going to make all your arrows facing towards the top. Okay, so you're going to start with that and sew these together. And you're going to do it the same way that you did your, let me see if I can get this set up somehow. The same way that you did your other patches, where you sew with the faces facing each other. So I'm just going to fold that up so it's got the two liner sides. That's your top. It's going to go like this. And then you're going to sew this together like this. Which, if I had blue painter's tape, I would do blue so that you would know that those are different. And you're only going to sew this part. Don't do the sides because something else has to go there. So you're going to do just that side. You're going to do the same thing to this side. Fold it over. Do a long seam here. And this is a part where if you had zigzagged your patches together, you're going to want to zigzag here too. Because these are, this seam right here is this line right here. So that's the side and that's the top. So this seam right here would need to be zigzagged also. And that's that seam. So the next thing that you want to do is the sides aren't really going to matter because they're not the same. So you just pick whichever one you want for the side. Personally, I don't like when the two fabrics touch, so I would flip this one upside down like that and then do them that way. So you do the same thing where you just sew the one side. And I would do, when you're sewing these together, definitely do a regular straight seam and then zigzag on top of it if you zigzagged. Don't just zigzag because that won't be a strong enough thing. Alright, so you have that side. And then next is your other side. So you're going to do like that. And if Sully can sew, you can just kind of like assembly line this and have him do panels while you're doing something else and it might go faster. So right now you have this, you can see that very well, just kind of shaped like a diamond. Not a diamond, what is that? It's a cross. So your bottom piece, and again I'm just going to use the solid piece because it's on the bottom and nobody's going to see it anyway. So you can just pick either here or over here, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to do it over here because I'm right-handed and it seems to make sense. So I'm just going to put that over. Put this over here. Okay, so these are all stitched together like so. Okay, and the next part will probably be more of a pain, but ultimately what we want to do is we're going to be sewing these together like this. We're going to sew them all together. So just pick a side like this, and then if you have, if your machine, mine you can take it off like if you're doing a sleeve. Seems a lot better because you just put it in your machine like this, and this corner right here you'll have to bend in a little bit. It's not a big deal. So I have, this is an identical side and then just one of the regular ones, and same thing here, just do a straight straight seam and a zigzag, because all of these stitches will kind of be exposed. I guess people sit on them and they get worn out or whatever. Then that seam will show. So make sure that the thread that you're using coordinates with whatever fabric you have. Alright, so I have that side done. And I'm just going to do this side. I'll probably be able to pull off turning it inside out with my scrapbook paper, but we'll see. Alright. I'm hoping that this all makes sense and that you'll be able to figure out how to do it. Okay, so I've got and this is that bottom piece. Alright, so I'm sewing this side together. Alright, so here's that bottom piece. So you're just going to do the same thing, sew it all together. And my box will probably fall apart once I try to turn it inside out, but I'll try. Alright, so you do, at this point you're only going to have 3 sides to sew. So once you sew the 2 sides fully together, when you get to the very last seam, you only want to sew from the corners and then stop either, not directly in the middle, like over here to the corner. So that's where you're going to put your beans in. You don't want to leave an open corner to stop at, because you're going to end up having a top stitch over that, and you don't really want to have to deal with the corners. So I'll show you mine. I'll tape. Right. So we're just going to sew the corners together, and then leaving a nice little gap in between. So that would be the gap. And then here is, see, like mine, here's a corner, and that's about, let's see. So this is about 4 inches from the corner, and then this side is 9. So this is you need this hole here to be able to turn it inside out. So my box is probably going to collapse because it's just taped together. So when you have this, you're just going to turn it all inside out like you would a pillowcase. Sorry, yeah, that didn't work. Okay. Well, anyway, so it's going to end up, yours won't fall apart because it's all sewn nicely together, nice and tight. So anyway, it'll look like that-ish. And then the last thing you need to do is just take your, oh, come on, the part that you left open, and that's where you're going to put your beans. So the way that I dumped them in, and there's probably, I guess if you took maybe like a paper towel roll or something and stuck it in there too, if you just made like a fake funnel that you could stick in the hole. But the way I did it is I was using a different bean bag, and so I just kind of put like some cardboard in there to kind of give it that, and I safety pinned mine on there because I was doing it by myself, but with 2 people it would probably be a lot easier. So you just pour your beans in. After you get your beans in, then you're just going to top stitch your hole. And I did 2 straight seams, and I zigzagged it because it's the hole. This thing does not want to go up close. And then this is probably the hardest thing to sew, and you will need, like if you get Sully to help you hold the beanbag while you sew it, because it is really awkward to hold. So I did two, you can't even see it, but there's a straight seam here, and then there's a straight seam along the top, and then I zigzagged in between the two of them. So again, it's the bottom, so it doesn't really matter. And so then you've got your beanbag. So that's pretty much it, and it's probably looks easier than it actually is. So if you get frustrated, don't feel bad, because it was kind of frustrating for me at times. And you know, good luck. Hope this helps.